this doesn't make sense either way you look at it. It's either a game based on a movie that doesn't exist, or a sequel to a game that never even came to this system. This is ridiculous. It's crazy. I feel like I'm babysitting, except I'm not getting paid. It's the Goonies II for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Speaking of that somewhat confusing name, I have to imagine I wasn't the only kid in the 80s who saw this game and thought, oh, awesome, they're making another Goonies movie. Only they weren't, and they didn't. But you assumed that because, well, there was no Goonies 1 for the NES. What a mean-spirited trick. 25 years later, I'm still pissed about it. I'm gonna hit you with my pinchers of power, Konami. Actually, the confusion of the Goonies 2 goes a lot deeper than the name on the box. This is one of the strangest games to ever hit the NES, both for its bizarre hybrid gameplay and its god-awful localization, and its obtuse objectives, and its depiction of Mama Francis. I'm telling you, I can smell her bubblegum! So this is basically two genres combined into one game. The original Goonies was a platformer, so that's part of the mix. But this one adds, of all things, point-and-click adventuring. So it's like Mario meets Shadowgate, only nowhere near as good as either of them. As for the story, well, that doesn't make any sense either. The Fratellis are out of the slammer, so they kidnap the Goonies. Mikey has to rescue them. Alright, makes sense. Then Mama Fratelli says something about, oh, I kidnapped Annie too. So you're like, wait, did she mean Andy, the hot one? No, she meant Annie, you know, the mermaid. What, should I bring her a dingle hopper? And that's the thing, there's just so much weirdness to the Goonies too. I mean, you run into Eskimos, polar bears, so even though there's a lot of good stuff here, the weirdness really defines the experience. You'll either love it for that, or think it's the dumbest thing ever. And in both cases, you're probably right. Speaking of the good, the game actually has an almost Metroidvania feel to it. You're dropped into this non-linear world, you're given no direction, and the game just says go. You end up going from these attics to caves, and that actually calls to mind the underground labyrinth that set the stage for the Goonies movie. So that's awesome. Now, the game doesn't play quite as well, the platforming's a bit floaty, but it's at least serviceable. On the other hand, the adventuring parts aren't quite as good. They feel kind of underdeveloped and tacked on. And again, as you might expect, it's also pretty obtuse. Like, you have to randomly hit walls to find stuff, with no real clues or reason to do it. Now, some people love that, some hate it. Personally, I could do without it. But there's a reason people love this game, and good reason too. It's a really fun game, despite some esoteric conventions and freaking mermaids. Plus, I mean, it's got an 8-bit version of the Cyndi Lauper Goonies theme song. If you ask me, the Goonies have always been good enough, even on the NES. Big thanks to our friend Chris from New York for sending it in.